Welcome to the Mortgage Broker Podcast, tailor-made for Canadian mortgage industry professionals. Proudly presented by A Better Way Mortgage Group, this podcast is your trusted source for insider insights, market updates, and strategies to elevate your career in the ever-evolving world of mortgage brokering. Whether you're a seasoned broker with A Better Way Mortgage Group or an industry enthusiast looking to stay ahead, our episodes are designed to empower you with the knowledge and tools you need to excel in the Canadian mortgage space. All right, we're back for another episode of the Mortgage Broker Podcast. I'm your host today, Dean Lawton, and I am going to be joined by Shawn Kanungo, an absolute gem of a person and an expert in the AI space. If you were at our Ascend Mortgage Summit, you would certainly know Shawn. And, Shawn warned us that the middleman is dead. And today we went behind the scenes on how to actually build that digital employee. We covered why your CRM might be obsolete, and how to create mortgage ninjas in your folders and why your knowledge is no longer your competitive advantage. Really cool stuff there. If you aren't automating the grunt work, you are the grunt. And we really go deep here. So for anyone that's, maybe surface level AI user, using ChatGPT to refine emails, this episode is really going to blow your mind. And, you're probably somebody that wasn't at our Ascend Mortgage Conference. Shawn was the keynote there. And this AI, Agentic AI movement era that we are in right now is just a fascinating world for anyone that, is an idea, think outside of the box type of person. I truly believe this is just an incredible time to be a mortgage broker, an incredible time to be an innovator. One thing I'd say, there's certainly some scary components of where AI is going from a mortgage broker's lens. But if you really dive in, I think this episode will give you a real boost of motivation on what's to come and how good things are going to get for us. So tune in. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. If you have any questions, feedback after the show, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll pass it on to Shawn. Shawn, welcome back. We're still hearing the echoes of your keynote at the Ascend Mortgage Summit. You certainly left a lot of brokers in that room feeling, both inspired and honestly a little bit terrified about the black hole of mediocrity. So I wanted to bring you on today to move past the keynote and get into the how. You told us the agentic era is here.
Yeah.
So let's start there. If the traditional mortgage broker is currently a high-paid data entry clerk, what does the scary broker of 2026 and beyond actually look like?
Well, first of all, let me just tell you that I had such a great time at the Ascend summit that you guys had, and it's such an incredible experience just to see so many people afterwards and chatting with folks excited about what this AI revolution is going to do and excited about what the opportunities look for this industry. I fundamentally believe that we are going to reimagine everything that we know about being a broker. And hopefully that this is a catalyst for people to get excited. And I don't want people to be fearful, around it. You asked the question, what it means to be, a dangerous mortgage broker. I would challenge everyone to look at every single one of their processes and say, how do we make something incredibly agentic and frictionless and into a button? Where do we actually slow things down? And it's about client relationships and trust and meaning and holding a client's hand. And so to me, taking a look at everything that we do in that lens is incredibly important. To me, what agentic AI really is, and if you weren't part of it, Ascend, agentic AI is really about software that can not only think like us, but it can actually get stuff done. It can actually go off and take action. And what we are seeing every single day is that these platforms are becoming more agentic, meaning they're actually able to go off and execute. What's exciting is that, you can feed it any sort of information, you can train it with, different skills, and it can go off and get stuff done. And I'm not even in this industry. And so to me, what's exciting is looking at all the redundant, manual, repetitive tasks and saying, okay, how can we do this better? That's what dangerous looks like. Look at every part of your business and say, how do we reimagine it?
The coolest part about this era to me is just, I've always been a big idea guy. There's always been, there's some cool feature I thought of in the middle of the night that I wanted. It's almost like the death of like the SaaS and the rise of the custom in a sense, right? Brokers have spent years waiting for CRM companies to build a feature. I believe we are in this build timeline where it's not really wait or buy, as where software is almost like disposable in a sense. Like I'm looking at all parts of our business, and
Yeah.
one of your examples was just like how quickly you built a CRM in like a
Yeah.
TikTok format. And, I'm taking that to a whole nother level from our business. And it's just so cool to be able to like think of something, implement, and it's done like within one day. It's just pretty cool. So like where I wanted to kind of go here was like, we've been trained to wait for these updates from software providers. You're essentially arguing that software is now disposable, is at least how I see this.
This is such a great subject because, there's two camps to this, which is one saying that, software as a service is dead. It's part of the reason why, if you took a look at some of the stocks of the software as a service companies like Salesforce and HubSpot, they're all on the decline, not because the business model is dead, is because the way that they do pricing for a per seat model is not as relevant in an AI world. The reality is that, software will still be relevant. Software as a service will still be relevant because they're implementing AI at a fever pitch too. Every single software as a service company will sort of reimagine in this AI world. What I'm excited about, and the reason why I wanted to present the fact at the event, and if you weren't there, what I did was introduce the concept by saying, listen, there's so many people in that room that don't have a CRM. And most people are running their business off an Excel sheet, or maybe even not even an Excel sheet, maybe just off the top of their brain, right? The beauty of having a CRM is it's a list that you can, go back to, you can remind, you can build, you can service. I think everyone understands the beauty of a CRM. And I think part of the reason why people don't have a CRM is because it wasn't fit for them and it wasn't fit for their needs. And so what I want to present at Ascend was that, listen, I'm a visual person. I don't think that anybody should touch a CRM. I just want to be able to voice it. I love like leaving voice notes. I use this tool called Whisperflow. I never type anymore. I just voice it. And that's how I want to interact with my CRM. I want to be able to put that client information into my CRM. I want to be able to extract information so that the agent becomes the interface to the CRM. What I'm excited about is that AI is actually personalizing software so that it fits for our needs. Now, listen, you still need security, accessibility, authentication. Like you might need an expert to get you cleared that last 10%, but something that's fit for you, I think that's an exciting revolution. So I want to say that I don't think software is dead. It's just personalizing software now for a group that probably wasn't using it in the first place.
Yeah, like the way I hear that, it's like CRMs have always been like just a system of record, where everything is. And then like the actual actionable steps that you can do to leverage that, that's where it just doesn't get implemented because, you're busy doing mortgage transactions, underwriting files, whatever it is. Maybe you forget or you don't have that protected time to go prospect, go follow up with your clients or whatever it is, where like this is now almost like going in a direction of like a system of intelligence. Like an agent is now monitoring that data and, maybe pinging the realtor automatically or pinging you, hey, call this client right now. Their maturity's coming up in 2 weeks or whatever it is, right? So I think that's what's really exciting for me is just the fact that I'm also a very visual person. I want to just speak my mind and do, opposed to sit in front of a computer, look at data, update fields or what have you. I just feel like the thought process of actually using a CRM will become far more easy for human beings to actually leverage going forward.
I love that. And you're right. One of the things I mentioned is that we are moving from this idea of system of record, which basically has been the story of software for the last number of decades, to the system of action, where you actually now have an agent that can go off and do stuff, monitor, take action. The use case around, maturity's coming up. Should we reach out to this client? Maybe you have an agent that's constantly monitoring this individual on LinkedIn, and maybe there's a job change. Maybe there's a move. Maybe they're going somewhere else. Like, how can our CRM ping us when something changes with that particular individual? And it's constantly proactive. Like, it's constantly monitoring folks every single day or every 30 days. Nobody's ever been able to do that with a CRM. And that's what's exciting about it.
Just moving into, kind of like the workflow that you kind of can imagine now. And you showed us, the Mortgage Ninja folder at Ascend. And let's get granular there. In a standard mortgage file, there are, let's say 50 plus documents and a dozen stakeholders, and if you were designing an autonomous loan officer assistant, what are, the chain of thought instructions you'd give it so it stops asking for permission and actually starts making decisions? Because I think That's what's really blowing my mind right now is these agents are actually just implementing without me even telling it or giving permission to it.
Yeah. To start off with and getting incredibly granular, one of the things that I showcased is the power of Claude and Claude Code. And I think the beautiful part about what Claude Code can do now is that it can almost autonomously go off and proactively get stuff done. The best way to use Claude Code, and by the way, I'm not here to push any sort of large language model. They're always changing. So one's going to be better than the other later. So, Claude Code at this moment from an enterprise perspective is the best. These large language models work on context. The way that I would treat it is just like I would treat a human being. What is the standard operating procedure that you would give to a regular human being that would be a loan officer to go off and get stuff done? What would be their actions? What documents would they need? And when you have a folder within your laptop or your computer where you can have that context, you can give them examples, and it understands exactly what they should be doing. And I would even give it a workflow, show it what it already does right now. Once you have all that information, that's all the context, I would say. And then you feed it the actual information that's required from a mortgage application. I would run that and see how accurate is it. I mean, you still have to monitor it. It might make a couple of mistakes, but for the most part, I think that you could probably simulate what somebody actually does. And this is not replacing what you do. This is speeding things up. I have never met a mortgage broker that has ever said, "Oh my God, I have so much time. Oh my God, I don't have anything to do today." There's always so much. And I just think that this allows us to build better relationships, to build a better book of business. And that's the power of what these AI agents can do now. It can have the context, and then it can go off and execute without you even asking.
This makes me think just kind of outside of the box a bit, and a plug for something that we're working on right now and launching February 18th is our Canadian Perfect Loan process. And it's a very systematized process that, the same thing happens every single time on a mortgage transaction, from the time of meeting the client to the transaction funding to everything post-funding. And to put a human being into a role, they need to have a role with a clear outline, and they're doing, very specific tasks along the way. And I think about, implementing an AI agent in anywhere in your process. If you don't have a process, how is it going to operate?
That's the exact point, is that you need to document your existing process, and it needs to be as thorough as possible. So maybe that's the starting point. But I also want to challenge you and everybody that's listening to this, is that I think the power of AI is that we reimagine the process. Because
Completely.
when an AI agent can do things that humans could never do, it changes how we look at things. One of the things that has come out since our actual summit, there's a new innovation. It's called OpenClaw. And what OpenClaw allows you to do, it's an open source agent, and it can leverage different large language models. You can use Claude, you can use ChatGPT, you can use Gemini. And what I have noticed using OpenClaw, and by the way, I'm not actually actively recommending this because, there's still security concerns around it. But if you're bullish enough and if you want to use your own laptop, if you want to test it out, it allows you to see what does a 24/7 AI agent that is proactive, it's like having a digital employee, what does that actually feel like? It's been a mindset shift for me because I think when it comes to our existing tasks and our existing processes, we look at it through a human lens. Meaning we look through it as, this is the problem in front of me. How do I go off and solve that? I think what AI agents are ultimately going to do, it's going to push us to think bigger. It's going to push us to think bolder. And the question that we should be asking is, what can an AI agent do that humans could never do? 24/7 analysis of all our customers and clients and our CRM. An underwriter that works overnight, taking a look and comparing this to other, situations. These are things that humans could never do. What I'm excited about when it comes to this AI revolution is that I don't think we've really thought about the potential and the opportunities of growing our business and thinking bolder now that we have a digital employee that never stops. What I've noticed using this technology OpenClaw is that it's like a human being, but it never stops. It never sleeps. You can say, "Hey, I'm going to bed," and it'll give you an update of all the things that it worked on. That's a
Wow.
mindset shift. And I'm trying to figure out what more can it do? Like, I'm struggling. And I'm the guy that wrote the book, The Bold Ones. I need to think more boldly around what this can do.
Hey, quick break from the show. And before we get back into it, I want to tell you about something I'm really proud of. We've just launched a free 5-part webinar series through Mortgage Masters Canada. If you're a mortgage broker in Canada and you've ever felt like you're doing everything yourself, working nights, working weekends, and still can't seem to break through to the next level, this series was built for you. It's called the Canadian Perfect Loan Process. It's the exact system that Derek Williamson and I used to scale our book of business to $500 million in just 1 year. And we're giving it away completely free. 5 sessions, real systems, lead generation, outreach, tech stack delegation, alternative lending, no fluff, no sales pitch, just the playbook. The series is running right now. Sessions are every 2 weeks, so there's still time to jump in and catch the next one live. Head to mortgagemasters.ca, that's mortgagemasters.ca, and register. It takes 10 seconds. Your name and your email, and you're in for all 5 sessions. All right, let's get back to it.
I really want to ask you, like, if you think about the mortgage business, what is something that you can do that humans could never do that would be value add or beneficial to a broker?
You know, it's a great question. And there's so many areas of the business to look at, right? Whether it's marketing and, staying on top of current trends from just that bucket alone, or, to your point earlier about, underwriting, lender policy. I mean, we work with 100 lenders at our disposal. Do we actually work with all 100? No, most mortgage brokers are probably honed in on 6 lenders because of just knowledge base, like the capacity to really understand how many policies and how many different things are changing. My mind goes in 20 different directions here of like what to imagine.
Wow.
And honestly, I think it actually brings up kind of a fear. And you mentioned like friction, like the friction pivot in a sense, like how does a broker stop themselves from just becoming a commodity? And where do we like intentionally put the friction back in to prove our value? Because I would say most people are hearing this and be like, am I going to have a job anymore, right?
If you're listening to this and you're questioning your value and your job, I will say that this is going to be the greatest opportunity for brokers because it's going to allow you to, double down on creating a much better client experience. And when we talk about friction, to me, friction is about how do we make things that are meaningful and magical and memorable? How do we hold someone's hand throughout a process? The reality is that when it comes to real estate, it is way too complex, way too emotional of a transaction for someone to leave that for a bot. So because of the complexity of the business, you're always going to have a human in the loop. Maybe in like 20 years, it may seem unnecessary, but at the end of the day, it becomes a lot more about that emotional piece. It becomes more about I'm holding someone's hand through a difficult situation. And for the majority of human beings, buying a home, selling a home, this is one of the most important moments of your life. And so that's why I know that the industry will remain resilient because of the emotional aspect to that. And because of that, it's like, how do we know our customers more? How do we problem solve with them in new ways? And so I think AI is going to be an incredible enhancement to what everybody does because it's going to remove the annoying things that we do at work so that we can just focus on, being differentiated and understanding different types of clients. I think that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as we move more into this AI revolution and it can do so much more, I think the brokers that differentiate themselves, they'll just understand niches a lot more. Like there'll be way more verticals of brokers that requires folks to become more savvy in certain areas, whether it's like, in certain markets or certain, categories of mortgages. It's going to force brokers from a marketing perspective to market incredibly narrowly around a particular path. And then also, it's going to force folks deepen the relationships with their clients a lot more as well. So I just think that it's going to be exciting.
I think you nailed it just at the end there, like the opportunity to build relationships. I believe this is like the era going forward for mortgage brokers is an opportunity to actually really care and build relationships and really know the people you're working with because the extra time that you're going to have to really go deep on these client relationships, these referral partner relationships. Like, how do you give value? How do you actually care? Tim Brahim coached us for years in the US, and it was always like, we're not selling, we're building relationships, we're giving value. And we actually care about our clients. And that was always so hard to do when we first implemented our process going back to 2018, when we were just hitting a wall, didn't have a proper system, didn't have a process, everything was scattered. And when we started to put, the real, bedrock foundation in place to be able to actually move the needle and free up our time to really just be speaking about mortgages to people that wanted mortgages or that could give us mortgages, and then building relationships with those folks. I feel like this is just a massive opportunity to go even deeper there. And I look at the folks that, sit behind a desk and are maybe a little bit more introverted than extroverted. I feel like those are going to be the folks that maybe struggle in this kind of movement going forward, and until they get outside of the box and really start to care. Because yes, like, you mentioned, you can be a lot more knowledgeable on a typical product, let's say reverse mortgages or self-employed clients. But the reality is like, you're still going to have to, build that trust with the human being and be a resource that somebody can call and trust. Because I think a lot of consumers that are just getting, kind of familiar with AI. And again, I could be wrong, but I think a lot of folks aren't going to trust that AI is giving them the right advice from a consumer perspective. And what's programming this AI? Is this, the big blue bank telling me to, take a 5-year fix? Is that the right product for me? And I found, clients always just wanted to know, what do you have? Like, what's your mortgage? And really, get my opinion from what I would take. So I can't say this enough. I just feel like this is such a huge opportunity in our industry. And folks that are afraid of it, I think they really need to change that mindset. And you keep bringing that up, like the mindset shift. And like, even just from 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, how much your mindset's already changed because of a new open cloud, or, I think that's the coolest piece.
I'm constantly, trying to challenge myself around how I look at this revolution too. And it's exciting to say, how do we think bigger? How do we think bolder? I was with a client the other day, and it really spurred me on to, reference this in my keynote. It's like, let's say you're a broker and you have a 5-year plan. I think one of the ways to challenge yourself is to say, how would I do this plan in 6 months? And the reason why you have to ask such a crazy question, how do I complete my 5-year plan in 6 months, is that you have to train your brain to think exponentially. The problem is that we think very linearly. When you say, how do I change my 5-year plan to 6 months? You can't optimize your existing processes. You literally have to start from zero. It's like, if I asked you to lose 30 pounds in 90 days, unfortunately, you couldn't just eat a little bit better or go to the gym a little bit more or sleep a little bit more. You might have to fundamentally reimagine how you go about your diet and your sleep and your working out in order to achieve that particular goal. And so the same thing is true for your business. Now you have this exponential technology that is going to change everything. So it's like, how can we think bigger? How do we think broader? How do we service clients that are not in our area? How do we service clients that are globally? Thinking about moonshots that we haven't thought before, I think is such an exciting question. I think there's going to be so many successful brokers that can take this mindset and say, yeah, let's now think bigger, because now I have the smartest assistants at my disposal that will never sleep. How do we think bolder?
Yeah. And like, just jump in, like start using it. And it's amazing how much I've learned from just using the tools, like just asking questions and starting to, wrap my head around, how can I do this? How can I do that? Every idea I have is its own brainstorming chat. And then, then there's the building, and you just continue to learn. And I look at this as, there is a referral partner opportunity here. And you look at real estate agents, financial planners, realtors hands down would be the biggest opportunity for a mortgage broker to always get business. That's always been, the case in our industry, at least as long as I've been here. And it's like, where can we add value to realtors, beyond buying them lunch and sending them rate updates? Like, what if you were just like a month ahead of them from a knowledge perspective and utilizing AI? What could you imagine there to be able to, hey, like, how can we build, maybe a tool to find expired listings, or, why didn't this property sell? Like, what are these, opportunities to potentially build agents that you could share with your real estate agents? Maybe just anything from that perspective, like just the idea of constantly giving value, but utilizing this movement for that.
And hey, once you have AI, now you can spend more time at the open houses and come in and, bring some coffee and, just be a value added person for a real estate agent. I think I was listening to this on your podcast. It's like how many brokers are going to those open houses on the weekends and showing up and showing value and being that face. There's not that many people that are doing this consistently over time because you need that face time. You need to actually, walk into a home and do that. And it's hard to do because everyone's busy. Well, now you have an AI that can help you hopefully free up more time. That's where you're going to build a better business by deepening relationships with your clients, but also with your referral partners too. And I think this opens up exciting ways of doing that, not only like spending more time, but to your point, it's like if you are more savvy when it comes to this AI revolution, like how do you open up data sources that maybe the planners or the real estate agents don't have and create more value for them? I don't have all the answers, but to me, it's an exciting possibility.
Totally. As we near the close here, I want to ask, yeah, and I think I know the answer to this, but you've said like knowledge is no longer power, especially in an industry built on expert advice. That could be a terrifying statement, especially, let's say you're a 19-year-old with a suite of AI agents has the same knowledge as a 20-year veteran. What's that veteran actually selling now?
Yeah. So to me, and I always say that knowledge is no longer power. Because now you have, four like incredible geniuses in your pocket. You have Grok, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. And for me, I have OpenClaw too. That's five genius in your pocket. Knowledge is not the differentiator. What's a differentiator to me is somebody with high agency. A high agency person is an architect of their own outcomes. A high agency person is somebody that goes off and gets stuff done. A high agency person is the person that is able to use all the tools and technologies in front of them and say, hey, how do we orchestrate all of this to get stuff done? And so to me, what's going to become disproportionately more important in the future is like, how do we hold someone's hand? How do we help them through a difficult situation? From a personal perspective, I spent 12 years in management consulting. So management consulting is a knowledge-based business. All you have is your laptop and problems in front of you, and you're there to solve it. Many people would think that the management consulting industry is going to die because, I worked in strategy. You learn all this stuff about a company and where the future is going and where they want to go, and you give them a strategy, right? It's kind of like a mortgage almost. But to me, the profession changes. The profession changes because now you have to hold a client's hand through that journey. It's about understanding their problems even more deeply so that you can provide the best solution. And you become much more of a coach, an influencer, and a therapist in that role. And that's how the profession is going to change. And I think I actually see the same thing as a broker. It's being that coach. It's being that therapist. It's being that person that holds somebody's hand through that process. I don't know if that's a skill set that everyone has. And it's an exciting opportunity for everyone. So to me, I think that's how it's going to change, and it's just going to become more of a human industry. And I guess the paradox is that in an AI world where it can, facilitate all this back-end work, that actually the job becomes more human.
I think for a lot of people, that's a very exciting and warming, thing to think about. A lot of people in our industry, I'd say, they're some of the most caring, nurturing people that I've ever met, and some of the most collaborative people. Like, it's pretty cool. Like, just, being in this industry for 15 years, our competitors are some of our best friends. We share notes, share tactics. And just from, that statement, it's like, it's only going to get more human is pretty cool. I think I'll wrap it off as like the work scared closing, I guess I'll call it. If you had to fire your entire human processing team tomorrow and replace them with a digital workforce, what is the one thing you would be most terrified to lose? And is that thing actually replaceable?
How do I automate my entire role? That should be everyone's job. Because when you do that, not only do you free up time to work on more value-added things, but you become the most valuable person in your own business. And to be honest with you, you can become the most valuable person in any business if you know how to do that. I mean, I'm trying to do this in my business, which is how do we just work on creative? How do we just work on taste and aesthetics and holding a client's hand? How do we just work on the things that are incredibly human? And the things that will always be resilient in terms of human beings is trust, relationships, creativity, helping somebody, supporting somebody. I mean, those things will always exist. And so I'm actively trying to think, how do I continuously, automate everything that I do so that I can focus on those things? And I think that's the lens that everybody should have, which is let's start automating everything that we can so that we can become less efficient. Meaning, how do we spend time on things that are more delightful and inefficient? So I guess the paradox is that in a world where you want to make everything so efficient, it's like, how do you become more inefficient? I just want to bring this up just as a personal story when it comes to like a mortgage. So recently my wife, she bought a property and she wanted to split it. And she wanted to build like 2 houses on this plot of land. And when she was going through the process, the mortgage broker at the time was not aware of everything that she wanted to do. She was not aware of everything that was going on in the neighborhood. And then later on, my wife learned that there was a caveat that she wasn't able to split this property. So she bought this property without knowing that you couldn't split it. And now she's holding this property that she didn't know what to do with. I don't know who should have known that. Maybe the real estate agent should have known that. Maybe the broker should have known that. But somebody should have known that information. How could we avoid this situation? And to me, it's about, having an expert understand the situation completely, checking all of their bases to avoid this particular, nightmare situation. And I just feel like that's about knowing a situation as deeply as possible, knowing the client as deeply as possible and their ambitions and their motivations, and then helping them navigate them through that process. It just didn't happen. And I just think that has nothing to do with data. That has everything to do with understanding the task at hand. And so I just think that there's so many opportunities just like that. Yeah. And then there's 1,000 cases like that happen, right? So,
I mean, that is such a great example and just got my mind thinking it's, a totally different direction of where this era could really pretty much eliminate that from ever happening again.
What's funny is that I don't know if an AI could have predicted that, because you didn't know the owner's ambitions. You didn't know, the legalities of that neighborhood. So that requires deep knowledge.
I mean, if you think about an AI agent working 24/7 around the clock just to better understand lender policy, zoning requirements in certain properties, what works, what doesn't work from a legality perspective, and just always being up to speed on that. Like I'm using this device Plod that just records pretty much everything I say in a day. Maybe you're not going to ask the question, but what if your process now just involves like, hey, here's an extra value add from one of my agents. Here's everything you can do and can't do with the property. Is anything maybe a red flag here? And that could maybe draw your wife's, thought process was to divide this property. Maybe that question would never come up in your process, but now you have this, hey, red flag checklist that now, the client should be looking at, right? I mean, there's so many different ways that you can kind of preemptive, like, pull sort of, information out. But like, I think the main thing is like, that's one tool, that's one agent that can now give extra value to your client, get extra value to your real estate agent. If I was a realtor and a broker had a tool like that, I would want to work with them.
Hey, that's $1 billion business right there that you just created on the spot.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just the thing. I think like you mentioned it, ideas are like gold right now. You just have to have the idea and the rest is easy.
I fundamentally agree with you. I think this is the era of ideas because technology is becoming increasingly more commoditized. And to me, it's really about execution. It's about making those ideas happen because now everybody is a coder. Everybody is a designer. Everybody is a software engineer. And in this era, it's really about, okay, what can I not do? What an exciting question to ask. What can I not do today?
Shawn, that was unreal. I thank you so much for your time today. Everything you did for us at Ascend, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you and chat with you. I'm very thankful and appreciative, and I know our listeners will be as well. So thank you very much.
It's such a pleasure to be on this pod. And by the way, if you've gotten this far, rate, review, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Because when I was preparing for, multiple different, broker events, I went back and listened to almost every single episode that you guys have been doing. And I think, highlighting different parts of the entire, I guess, value chain of what, mortgage brokers or even, real estate agents or compliance folks, or had a great couple pods with Justin as well. Like, what a great way to learn this business so that you can continue to improve. What you guys have done, with the organization has been incredible. Excited just to be part of this pod and, the event. So can't wait to continue to collaborating in future too.
Awesome, man. That means a lot. And Again, thank you for everything and really appreciate this. Thank you for tuning in. If you found value in this show, please subscribe to our channel on your preferred platform. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Your support is incredibly appreciated. We also welcome your reviews and feedback, which are crucial in helping us deliver outstanding educational content. Feel free to share your thoughts. A 5-star review would be fantastic if you think we earned it. Lastly, a vital announcement about Backpack Buddies, our chosen charity for 2025. This remarkable organization addresses a hidden hunger issue many are unaware of in British Columbia. While school districts provide meals during school hours, numerous children face food scarcity at home, particularly during the weekends. Backpack Buddy steps in to support these vulnerable children, ensuring they have easy-to-prepare, familiar food for weekends. This is achieved through collaborations with schools and an extensive distribution network. Your contribution can make a significant difference. With just $20, you can give a child in need a food bag from Backpack Buddies filled with enough meals and snacks to sustain them over the weekend and more. Once again, thank you for listening and see you on the next one.